Welcome back. I'm now being joined on the program by Gabriel Idahosa, who is an economist and also the Deputy President of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Idahosa, thank you very much for joining us on the program. COVID-19, now a global pandemic, and we're definitely feeling the heat, especially when you talk about the economics of it. How do we get out of this? Our budget is now very much under threat.
Well, the virus situation, it's an aftermath of an event that has really nothing to do with Nigerian economic planning or public finances. So we don't get out of it. We adjust our public finances to the reality of the new situation.
And talking about that adjustment now, what areas would you want to see adjustments in?
Yes, the options open are actually determined by the projected length of the effect of the coronavirus. If the virus is going to have an impact, say, just in this first quarter and maybe the next quarter, that's the first 2 quarters of the year, the government essentially has to reduce the size of the budgets to a new figure that reflects a revised projection of the price of oil, which today we are looking at 35, 40 range.
So if you were to make your own projection, what would it be? I mean, if you were to say, look, this is how much we should peg the price of oil, you know, the budget benchmark, the new budget benchmark now, what exactly would you be looking at? Yeah,
from what we know today, and if we assume that the virus will continue to be as widespread as we have it now till the end of June, then we certainly should be looking at low as 35. If that is the case.
Wouldn't 35 be too optimistic? I mean, considering that as we speak now, the price is even slightly below 35 and hovers around that figure. Some people are suggesting 20.
Yeah. Well, you see, there's the immediate reaction from what the Saudis have done and what the Russians have threatened to do. But there's also the fact that when the Saudis and the Russians have increased their production, it's going to impact on shale. The shale oil in the US cannot continue to produce at the rate they are doing today if the Russian and US increase in production is established as promised in the next few weeks and sustained for, say, 2 or 3 months. The production from shale will obviously come down as we saw before. And the prices, we are going to stabilize somewhere around where we are now. It's not likely for prices to go to all the way to 25, 20 as is being speculated, because there's a certain minimum price of oil that makes most of the shale production in the United States and Canada profitable. Beyond that price, below that price, as we saw in the last round, they had to practically close shop until prices moved up again. So yes, it might go down slightly below where they are now, but by the time the Saudis and the Russians have done what they want to do, which is their intention anyway, to force the shale producers out of the market, it's likely that we are going to be settling for where we are now. That's even assuming that coronavirus impact continues to about June. But it's very likely the impact might taper off as early as the end of April.
Well, we're thinking of that anyway. We just have to wait and see, because with the way it's spreading, it's looking like it's going to get worse before it gets better. But don't you think this presents us with an opportunity to come forward with a more realistic budget? Because over the years we've had budget with bogus figures, and at the end of the day, what you would have would be somewhere around 50 to 52% or 55% budget performance. Don't you think this is the time for us to get realistic, for instance, and come up with a budget that is more realistic and with figures that are more realizable?
Well, that discussion has always been had. You don't need to wait until there is a crisis of this magnitude for you to do realistic budgets. The issue of realistic budgets and effective implementation of a realistic budget has been on the table for as long as this administration has been in government. Some observers have said that this is also an opportunity to talk about diversification. It's an opportunity to talk about life beyond oil. But all these so-called opportunities do not need to wait until we have any crisis. Any country like Nigeria that are dependent on oil for a long time has learned already by now that other countries that had oil, like Norway, like Kuwait, like United Arab Emirates, did not have to wait until there was any crisis of any type to understand that oil is a depleting asset. As you dig it out of the ground, it gets less and less. And that you needed to build an economy and a budget and a public finance framework that was not dependent permanently on crude oil production. It had to be dependent on an economy that was very balanced, with income coming from a wide range of sectors of the economy. So it is not an opportunity that is arising now. It's an opportunity that has been there from day one, maybe 40 years ago when we started producing oil, that we did not need to depend on oil. It's really, there's no real hope that the government will now realistically, seriously decide to take this opportunity as it's being perceived. It's more likely to be business as usual. After a few days of saying that, oh, we have to look beyond oil, we have to look at diversifying the economy, the fundamental thinking of those controlling the economy now is not likely to be changed. There's no reason to suspect that radical reform in thinking is going to happen. It would be a pleasant surprise if going forward the government begins to look at a different paradigm from what we are doing now, which is a paradigm of what is the oil price and therefore what is our budget. By the time we start to think of a budget without even thinking of the oil price and just base the budget upon the fundamentals of the Nigerian economy, agriculture, the services are producing far more to the GDP of Nigeria now than oil. ICT is contributing far more than oil to the GDP of Nigeria.
That also gives you it clearly then shows that, look, somehow we can argue that the economy is already diversified. The only challenge is that oil is still the major source of revenue, if you like. But if you look at it on the basis of GDP, we can argue that the economy is fairly diversified.
Yes, the economy is diversified, but the mentality of the administrators of the economy is not diversified. If their mentality was diversified, they will put all the revenue from oil into the excess crude and the foreign, the sovereign wealth accounts. The government will not bring any revenue from crude export into the annual income of budget of our country. Rather, they will invest all the oil money, and it is the income from those investments that will come into the annual budget, the way countries like Norway do it. So that is when you will have a properly diversified economy. And so if the price changes as it has happened now, the government will not be worrying about its recurring budget, the current budget for 2020, because the income from oil that is related to the budget will be the income from previous investments of our oil revenues, not the current crude sales. That is the issue of the real sense of diversification of the economy. But if we have an economy that depends on the current crude sales, a country like the UAE hardly worries about the current crude sales. The income from tourism and trade in the UAE more than accounts for perhaps 80, 90% of the budget. So they are not worried about their current budget being affected because of the current price of oil. That's the point about diversification, true diversification. But when you say you diversify as we do now, and anytime the oil price changes, we have to rush back to the drawing board to rewrite our budget, then we haven't really diversified.
Let me just quickly ask you this final question, sir. Let me just quickly ask you this final question. Of course, we had the head of the NNPC say, look, at the moment, you have about 550 cargoes of Nigeria oil right out at sea, still looking for buyer. It's out there looking for buyers. We also have about 12, according to him now, 12 cargoes of our LNG as well, and we've not been able to find buyers for them. Then, in the light of all of this, what do you think? What do you think the consequence will be on our foreign exchange? Because we can now begin to see that whether we like it or not, the naira is fast depreciating, and people are saying, look, devaluation might not be too far away. Yeah, the devaluation, again, that is the mindset with which we run the economy. The facts of the ground, if the CBN will give it to us, will show that the foreign inflows, currency inflows in Nigeria from diaspora remittances, for example, is far higher than the revenues from crude oil. And if both the government and the CBN were to write our budget and our public finances on that basis and to say, this is the actual foreign currencies that sustain the country, not necessarily the oil, people will not panic when the oil prices go down. The reason why we all panic is we believe, even if the statistics are properly set out, and it is not the case, we believe that once the oil prices drops, the price of the dollar must drop because we are an oil-producing country. So immediately Corona happens and the price of crude oil comes down, everybody, both those who have anything to do with dollar and those who did not have to do anything to do with dollar, rush into speculation. People buy dollars and unhoard it, believing that, dollar is going to go up, naira is going to be devalued. Those who have genuine needs for dollars, maybe in 2 or 3 months' time, now rush to go buy dollars because they believe just because the price of the crude has come down, Nigeria's currency will be devalued. So all of this is just self-inflicted panic that has nothing to do with the fundamentals. But that is because of the way our public finances not only are managed and are also communicated to us. The government says they depend on crude oil prices to determine their budget. And so everybody believes that once crude oil prices come down, everything is coming down, we are going to see devaluation. So the first responsibility of CBN is to come out with the facts and say, let's separate the facts from fiction. In 1929, in 2019, in 2018, in 2017, these were all the sources of foreign currency inflows into this country. This is how much that came from diaspora remittances. This is how much that came from portfolio investment, foreign portfolio. This is what came from foreign direct investment. This is what came from crude oil. And then by the time we see all of this, Nigerians can see clearly that if you panic because the crude oil prices are coming down, you probably are just doing it because you want to panic, not because it is going to have that kind of impact on us in real terms. But the fact that we do panic and we create
artificial scarcity, as we have done now in the last few days, means that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We act in the assumption that devaluation will happen, and we move all our economic behavior, move us towards the devaluation. So it's up to government, particularly the CBN and the fiscal side, the finance ministry, to let Nigerians know the exact facts of where our foreign currencies are actually coming from. Since the central bank opened the investment and export window, let Nigerians see how much of our foreign currency is coming in through that window, separate from what is coming from crude oil sales. But until those facts are ingrained in the thinking of the average Nigerian, anytime the crude oil prices come down in the world market, everybody, you and I believe that devaluation is coming, and we start stocking up dollars, hiding them in our pockets, or keeping them in our domiciliary account, even when we don't need them. And people who don't need dollars 6 months from now are buying them now because by 6 months they expect it to devaluation to come. So this is essentially economic behavior issues now, not the real facts of our cash flows, of our foreign cash flows and our reserves. If you are looking at our reserves today, there is no reason for anybody to begin to look for devaluation. But the way we are wired to think about the economy now is the primary driver of what the likely devaluation we are going to see will happen.
All right, Mr. Idahosa, thank you very much for your time and for your thoughts.
Thank you.
Well, that's it on the program, but if you want to watch it again, it's very simple. Go to our website, www.tv360nigeria.com. You'll find this program and lots more. You can also follow us on our various social media platforms. So thank you very much for watching. I'm DEJI. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.